I think it was a pretty positive 7 days to be able to integrate with the CPL and give the guys that insight into professional teams, and the exposure to that level of cricket was, I think, really good. And the guys, a couple of them have individually said that that was a fantastic opportunity, so that was pleasing from that point of view. And then the games over the last few days and the training that we've done, and the opportunity, to meet with that squad as 30 and map out, a bit of a roadmap for what the future could look like, has been it's been great to be able to get everyone together and work through a lot of that stuff. I thought the performance against CPL 11 was decent. It was probably the batters that outperformed the bowlers on that day, whereas in these 50 over games it's probably been the bowlers that have outperformed the batters. So yeah, and that could be down to a couple of things, the level of intensity maybe, but probably more so just the application of our batters to be able to pace an innings appropriately, and once they get a start, go on and make it count. Whereas, in a 50 over game, you face 30 balls, that's a considerable amount of time in, well, especially in a 12 over game or 13 over game or whatever it ended up being. So that was probably one of the biggest things that the coaching and selectors were talking about, is just that ability to bat time and pace an innings. And I think across the board, that's one of the takeaways that we need to improve from this weekend. I mean, different guys have different approaches, obviously. It's not sort of a one-size-fits-all blanket approach, but just the ability to rotate strike and score off good balls as well as putting away the bad balls is something that we've got to improve. I think there's still too many dot balls that our batters are facing. And, they might eventually score a boundary, which releases the pressure, but against consistently good bowling, that boundary doesn't always come, and that's where batters get themselves into problems. Yeah, whether that's nerves of a trial, I'm not too sure. I mean, you want batters to batters naturally, and the way that they would in a game situation. And I guess if you're a bit nervous about getting out in a trial situation, then how are you going to be when you're put under pressure in a real international match? I guess that's a question mark that the selectors will have to consider. But we've got a few more opportunities to see some guys over the next couple of months, and maybe this as a first sort of initial thing with this squad of 30, that can be an area that is addressed moving forward. But I think guys naturally will start to select themselves in, and some guys put their hands up this weekend. That's not to say that there isn't improvement in their games required. Everyone has got room for improvement, and I guess that's both exciting but also shows that there's work to be done. We're hoping there's going to be some initiatives. The Marylebone Cricket Club are coming mid-September to the US, so they're playing a few games in different places, and it'll just be a matter of where they are and which guys are involved in those initiatives, and that's some discussions we'll have with the selection panel over the coming weeks. So there's some potential opportunity there, and then later in the year, moving towards World Cricket League, there'll be a couple of other things in place. But once we appoint a national coach, obviously that national coach would probably like to have some say into what that preparation looks like. So everything's sort of in pencil at the moment. The guys have got an idea of what things might look like, but we're hoping to give them as good a preparation as possible. I don't think it's necessarily a matter of narrowing down. I don't think that'll happen. It might just be which guys the selectors want to have another look at, and which guys maybe they don't need to or they don't want to at this stage. Again, discussions to be had. We've probably got to reflect on what we've seen over the last 6 or 7 days, and the panel will then decide what the best course of action is. But I don't think there's really that much value in just naming 14 guys now. We've got a good squad of 30 players, and they're all vying for spots, and I think that competition's healthy. Only one guy made 100. To do it in the first, he made 50 on Friday in the 2020 version, and then paced his innings really well in the first 50 over game, and that was Fahad. And he continues to make runs most times that he's put in these situations. So that's pleasing that someone can come out and do that. That's what you want to see from batters who are jostling for positions, is that someone comes out and it's hard not to pick a guy who makes a 50 and 100 in a trial series. So that was impressive. All of them showed a glimpse of what they're capable of. Would have been nice. Ravi got a couple of, he got probably a 30 and a 60 or whatever it was. So showed in the 2 games that he's willing to build an innings. But all of those guys would have been nice if they'd kicked on, and 30s and 50s and stuff don't necessarily win you games of cricket. Hundreds do. So would have been nice if those guys had gone on and made the most of a decent start. So it's hard to say that any of them have sort of locked themselves in on those performances. And similarly with the ball, there was some guys who put in some pretty decent performances, but there probably wasn't anyone that said stand up and pick me necessarily. So it's probably going to be a question of what we see further down the track, and also team balance and all those things that come into it.
What's the number one thing you're going to take out of this weekend, this experience, what you've observed with the players that you want to take forward?
There's lots of work ahead of them. That's the biggest outcome for me, is that there is talent there, but if these guys are going to get to where they've said that they wanted to in our session on Friday, then their fitness, their approach and their training, not just around the national setup, but in terms of the time they put in themselves, and the hard work that needs to be done individually or with teammates locally, there's plenty to do to get better, and it's on them to do it. If they put the work in and they perform to their potential, no doubt. But it comes down to being able to do that over the next couple of months and then put it all together in a high pressure tournament. But the makings of a successful squad is certainly there. So they've got to believe that that's right, but they've also got to believe that the hard work's required to be able to succeed.